Hi everybody, welcome back, and if you're new, welcome. My name is Gabby, and if you've never been here before, never watched any of my videos, have no idea what I do, I cover true crime cases, and all the cases that I cover are a little bit older. They're all basically 20 years or older, so if that's something that you might be interested in, maybe down below, click the subscribe button, and also make sure to turn on the post notifications to be notified every time that I upload. So in my video covering the disappearance of Alice Corbett, I briefly discussed the disappearance of another college student years earlier from an area nearby. Her name, Bertha Mellish. I mentioned that the case is a bit of a rabbit hole of its own, and so many people said that they wanted to see a video on it. So that's what we're doing today for the last video of Oldies October. For my video on Alice Corbett, I used research from a researcher I've worked with quite a few times now, Michelle Short, and after I told her how I want to also cover Bertha's case on my channel, she basically immediately got to researching. She's amazing. Michelle has tons of case write-ups on the site hub pages. I will link her page down below in the description of this video. Many of the cases that she has covered, I have covered myself on my channel. So if you enjoy my content, I am sure you will enjoy hers. If you haven't watched my video on Alice Corbett, I recommend watching that one first and then coming back to this one. It will be linked down below in the description of this video. Now let's get into the case. This is the unsolved disappearance of Bertha Lane Mellish. Bertha Lane Mellish was born on November 23rd of 1877 in North Scituate, Providence County, Rhode Island, to mother Sarah Mellish and father Reverend John Mellish. She was the youngest of two daughters. Her older sister Florence was nearly 21 years her senior. There are quite a few reportings out there that claim Bertha's birthday was January 1st, but findagrave.com, which is pretty trustworthy, states it was November 23rd. At the time that Bertha was born, her father was 53 years old and her mother was 49 years old, so they were a bit older when they had her. Bertha grew up in Killingly, a town in Windham County, Connecticut, that in 1870 had a population of a little over 5,700. Bertha was described as being quiet, well-liked, and of a cheerful disposition. She was a very kind-hearted girl, and she took her schooling seriously. She went on to attend the private liberal arts women's college of Mount Holyoke College in South Hadley, Massachusetts. It was founded in 1837 by Mary Lyon as Mount Holyoke Female Seminary with a curriculum comparable to men's colleges. It's still going strong today and was even recently ranked number 34 in US News and World Report's 2025 Best Colleges. Now, Bertha was extremely intelligent, and she excelled at many different subjects in school, including French, Greek, botany, chemistry, and rhetoric. Mount Holyoke College was roughly 70 miles northwest of her home back in Killingly. That isn't an extremely long distance, but we have to remember that this was the 1890s, and they didn't have vehicles at the time easily able to reach 80 miles per hour. So she wasn't traveling back home on the regular. She did, though, stay in contact with her family routinely by writing letters. In late 1897, Bertha wrote her last letter to her father. This letter was rather optimistic. There weren't really any sad undertones to it, but there was one aspect of it that could be taken as odd, possibly just coincidental though. She wrote, "Something very important is to happen 4 weeks from yesterday, namely my first debate here, and my last too, probably." Why she would classify this upcoming debate as her first and last one is unknown. Was it simply because she didn't see herself being involved in debates on the regular? Was this her giving her father a clue that she may not be around anymore to continue her participation in future debates? We don't know. Other than that, though, the letter seemed like a normal letter from a college student talking about their life at college. In this letter, she spoke of Scottish literature, a discussion that she had with a fellow student who claimed their grandmother was the cousin of famous Scottish novelist and poet Sir Walter Scott, and also mentioned an anticipated project of hers, writing, "I am going to write a personal essay on the philosophy of applause. Please, Papa, write me all your own personal views on that subject." Bertha was living the typical life of a college student, much like any other. Her parents were filled with curiosity to see the path she would take in her life. However, when she suddenly disappeared, it came as a shock to those who loved her. They were left in a state of uncertainty, unsure of what had truly happened to her. The date of her disappearance was Thursday, November 18th of 1897, only 5 days before her 20th birthday. This day started off like any other for the college junior, by her spending a portion of it dining with friends while they practiced their French. Bertha asked a friend of hers, Miss M.L. Eaton, as newspapers refer to her as, if she would like to take a walk with her. Bertha and Miss Eaton took a walk just about every afternoon together, but for reasons unknown, this day her friend decided not to join. November 18th was also Founders Day at Mount Holyoke, a day to celebrate the founders of the college, so this could have also been why she decided not to go with her. There were quite a lot of people just walking around campus, there was a lot of commotion, there were a lot of interactions, and Bertha was definitely the type of person who liked her solitude, so that's probably why she was pretty adamant at that time to go for a walk. Taking walks in nature, though, seemed to be one of Bertha's main hobbies. According to newspaper articles, she was exceptionally interested in botany, or plant science, so she enjoyed to take long walks in fields or wooded areas and study the plants that she came upon. After dining with friends, Bertha was pretty much by herself, so her exact movements for the rest of the day are unknown, but witnesses did later come forward with some information in an attempt to help authorities piece together a better picture of how the rest of her day went. We do know that a witness stated that they saw her leaving her dorm at one point, and it seemed like she was heading towards the post office. Two other witnesses came forward, and they stated that they saw her walking along the road that led to Smith's Ferry, which is a neighborhood in Holyoke and the second largest geographical division in Holyoke after Rock Valley. Then, one article released by Commercial on December 18th of that year did mention a campus employee that believed that they spotted Bertha at approximately 4:15 p.m. recklessly running along the cliffs at the gorge in this area. With it being Founders Day, Bertha's absence actually went unnoticed until the next day when she didn't show up for one of her classes. A fellow student was sent to Bertha's dorm to check on her. Upon entering the room, Bertha was nowhere to be found. What they did find, though, was Bertha's purse, money, and watch left behind, as well as a book of hers left open. The student informed faculty of Bertha's disappearance, and from there, a search party was assembled, made up of classmates, staff at the college, local volunteers, and authorities. They combed through the familiar paths that Bertha often wandered during her daily walks. Their efforts paid off as they stumbled upon a potentially crucial finding, a set of footprints. These footprints traced a path from the road to a cliff that loomed over the Connecticut River. A pair of Bertha's actual shoes were compared to these mysterious footprints, and they seemed to be the same size, so everyone believed that these footprints may have actually belonged to Bertha. These footprints led to two of the earliest and two of the main theories in this case. One, that Bertha went for a walk, got too close to the side of the cliff, and fell, subsequently drowning. Two, that Bertha took her life by jumping off the cliff into the water below. The Connecticut River was eventually dragged, but they never found her remains. Of course, she could have floated downstream, but she's never been found. Other than these footprints at the cliff, there was also one other clue that Bertha may have taken her life. That being a short story. I mentioned this short story in my video about Alice Corbett. In this fictional short story called La Petite, a story of Mattawagan Mill, published in a local newspaper, Bertha wrote of a woman who had ended her life by jumping into a river. If you're interested to read the entire short story, I will link it below in the description, but to summarize it, a woman is writing a letter to a 19-year-old girl she raised as if she were her own daughter. She tells of this woman, Marie, who was her friend, misfortunes of hers, and how she ultimately took her life by jumping into a river. At the very end of the short story, she breaks the news to the girl that Marie had actually been her mother. The girl that the letter was being written to in the short story was the same age as Bertha, and the mother in it jumped to her death. Those are some similarities to take into consideration. This short story also goes into quite a bit of detail regarding the fall itself. It's pretty heartbreaking. Besides the short story, though, no one who knew Bertha personally, even those closest to her, had anything to add when it came to signs that she may have been suicidal. At the beginning of this case, and still today, people lean more towards the theory that something happened at that cliff. I do have to mention that there was one single person that came forward claiming that they saw her the day after her disappearance at a train station in Hartford, Connecticut. This story, though, could never be authenticated. It could have been a completely made up, fabricated story, or the person could have seen a girl that simply looked like Bertha. At the time of her disappearance, her father was 73 years old and her mother was 69 years old. both were not in the best health. As soon as her father was notified of his daughter's disappearance, he did immediately travel to help in the search. He wasn't able to help long though due to his declining health. So from there, Bertha's sister Florence and family friend and physician Dr. Hammond assisted in the investigation the best that they could. A Pinkerton detective was also hired and a reward for $50 was posted. The reward money would soon increase to $500, which today is roughly $19,000. Bertha was described as being about 5 feet 5 inches tall, having a medium build, dark auburn hair, a fair complexion, brown eyes, a round face, and full lips. She wore her hair parted or combed straight back. She had a small scar in the center of her forehead. She was last seen wearing a black dress, a shaggy black jacket, a gray flannel skirt, and a black tam o' shanter, which is a Scottish-style hat. Her underclothing was marked Mellish. The reward money would go to anyone who found her alive, and if only her remains were found, that person would be granted $50 from Mount Holyoke College and $50 from the Mellish family. For this case happening back in 1897, there was quite a bit of attention on it. Her disappearance was featured in newspapers across several states, and just like any case, even ones today, many theories arose. There was no solid indication that Bertha had any love interest in life, but some people speculated that possibly she ran off to elope. And I feel like that's a common theory in so many cases of women who have gone missing. Even her closest friends, though, said that there was nobody that she was talking to in any sort of romantic manner. Some considered her disappearance was a result of foul play, that possibly she was a victim of homicide, but there were really no clues to point to that. Then there was the theory that she may have checked into a psychiatric facility and no one who knew her was notified of this. There is mention that her family had a history of mental health struggles, but no reports really go into great detail elaborating on this. The main people working on the case were Detective Mack of Holyoke, State Detective Munyon, and a detective out of Boston. Even based on a newspaper reporting from November 23rd by the Boston Globe, which would have been her 20th birthday, they were more so searching for a body. The search, though, had to be postponed and would be a few more times due to snow. I think that was truly the most bizarre and confusing part of this case, though, was the fact that most believed that she took her life, but it was like she completely vanished. Where were her remains? If she was in fact deceased, her family just wanted to be able to properly bury her in a family plot. The Mellish family was soon informed that a young woman resembling Bertha had been taken into custody all the way in Florida. Filled with hope, Florence and Dr. Hammond traveled to the Sunshine State to verify whether this was her or not. Florence, though, would soon send a telegram to her parents saying, "Coming home disappointed." The young woman was not Bertha Lane Mellish. Mistaken identity would occur again in this case the following year. In September of 1898, a woman's dismembered remains were found in Yellow Mill Pond in Bridgeport, Connecticut. A man came forward claiming he knew Bertha and the remains belonged to her. The news, of course, was bittersweet to the Mellish family. However, the Jane Doe would later be identified as Emma Gill. Emma had tragically undergone a failed abortion performed by a midwife named Nancy Guilford. After the procedure failed and Emma died, Nancy dismembered her and tried to hide the evidence by dumping her in a pond. Nancy Guilford was found guilty of manslaughter, but only served 8 years in state prison. For many years in Bertha's case, like so many other cases, her loved ones would get their hopes up and then their hopes would come crashing down and then their hopes would go up and then it'd come crashing down. And it was just a cycle continuing over and over and over again. Also, like in so many other cases, her parents were the victims of heartlessness. John and Sarah Mellish would end up receiving unsettling letters from a man named Henry S. Robinson. In these letters, Henry claimed that Bertha was alive and well and was using various aliases. Robinson, a 41-year-old farm worker from Waterford, Connecticut, tried to blackmail her family by demanding money, $500, in exchange for not revealing scandalous information about Bertha and her family, and if they sent him the money, he would keep quiet and bring Bertha home to them. This man was eventually, thankfully, caught in April of 1900 and charged with blackmail, but it was revealed that the woman that he believed to be Bertha was actually actually someone else. Even from the start of this man's story, people who knew Bertha, her family, and fellow classmates were hesitant to believe a word he said. The prevailing theory was that she had jumped into the Connecticut River, and very few were leaning towards the theory that she was still alive. A year later, in 1901, a young woman approached authorities in Goshen, Indiana, claiming to be a 16-year-old heiress who had been kidnapped. This tale brought her some fame, along with her statement that she had attended school with Bertha. Many began to speculate that she might actually be Bertha Lane Mellish, as she bore a striking resemblance to her. It was later revealed that she was actually Kate Irene Canning, the daughter of affluent parents from East Barr, Vermont. She had been missing for about 6 months and was described as having a touch of madness by multiple newspapers. Next month, this case is going to be 127 years old. Unless there is a case I'm missing, let me know down below. I am pretty sure this is the second oldest case I've covered on my channel, with the murder of Pearl Bryan in 1896 being the oldest. Bertha's father passed away on May 26th of 1909 at the age of 84, and her mother passed away on September 13th of 1912, also at the age of 84. Bertha's sister Florence passed away on January 1st of 1931 at the age of 74. Bertha's year of birth and assumed year of death is on Florence's grave marker as well, just in case Bertha's remains are ever located. The events leading up to Bertha's death are still completely unknown. It is accepted by most that look into her story, even back then, that her story ended somewhere in the woodlands of Mount Holyoke. The Connecticut River flows approximately 406 miles southward through 4 states. It is the longest river in the New England region. Could a piece of her existence wash up eventually for someone to find? Possibly someone walking a trail, alone, like Bertha had been on the day that she left campus, never to be seen again. Bertha's case, though, has quite a few similarities to Alice Corbett's case. Both went to prestigious colleges in Massachusetts. Both may have been going through some struggles mentally. Both had witnesses that supposedly saw them as they were leaving campus. Both enjoyed hiking and may have gone into the wilderness. And both are suspected of possibly taking their own life. We have to remember that back in those days, it wasn't as welcomed for a person to go into great detail about how, as they referred to it, melancholic they were feeling. Besides that, if you seem to be too emotional, especially as a woman, they most of the time would send you off to a terrifying psychiatric facility. Many of them were rampant with abuse. Especially back then, a lot of people felt like they had to keep these intense thoughts to themselves and just hope that they went away. Nowadays, there's a therapist easily accessible on your phone. There's so many mental health pages on social media, of course, books and different outlets. And if you're thinking a certain way, you can genuinely just go online and type something into Google, and chances are you're going to find a post somewhere on the internet relating to exactly what you're going through. Yet even today, people still struggle so deeply and many feel alone. We really don't know exactly what happened to Bertha or what she was thinking. Could Bertha have wrote that short story and really wasn't dealing with those type of thoughts? She did, of course, ask her friend to walk with her that day. That is something that we have to remember. Could she have simply just fallen into the Connecticut River? We don't know. There are a lot of times on my channel where I will say something along the lines of the possibilities are endless or the theories are never ending. In this case, I really truly believe that it's one of a few different theories, and it probably is one of the 2 main ones that actually happened to her. I of course can't say for sure though, that is just a personal opinion. I do have to mention that there is a book called The Button Field by author Gail Husch. It was released in 2014, and it is a fictional retelling of Bertha's life and her disappearance. So some of it is real details and some of it is not. Most of the time, I'm not the biggest fan of fictional retellings because you read them and it's kind of hard to separate fact from fiction, but according to reviews about this book, it is pretty interesting. It seems like the author did a bit of research into Bertha's life and her disappearance, but also what it would have been like going to college at Mount Holyoke College at that time in history, which I find extremely fascinating. I genuinely enjoy any type of content that feels like it snatches you up and just transports you to a different time. That, though, is all of the information that I have to share for you regarding the disappearance case of Bertha Lane Mellish. I want to thank you all for taking a little bit of time out of your day to hear about her case, and I hope that everyone has had an enjoyable October. Tomorrow is Halloween. Everyone be safe, and I will see you in the next one.